Alarms tore through the convention hall, and I was already running before I understood why. My name is Dave Ferris. 10 minutes earlier, I was a janitor with a mop and a bad knee. Now I was sprinting down a marble hallway in bare feet, my shoes lost somewhere behind me, while red emergency lights painted the walls the color of a warning nobody had bothered to explain. It started with a wedding. Not mine, not really, though everyone in that building seemed to think otherwise. An alien empire called the Vextari had come to Earth looking for a mate for their queen, Ahazil Vornathis, and out of every soldier, athlete, and billionaire lined up for her to choose from, she had walked straight past all of them and pointed at me. I still had a mop in my hand when she said it. This one. 2 words that flipped my whole life upside down in front of the entire planet. I did not get 5 peaceful minutes to process it. The lights had barely come back on after the ceremony, when someone cut the power to the east corridor, and a voice on the emergency channel started shouting my name, like I was a fugitive, instead of the accidental face of an interstellar treaty. A hand grabbed my arm from a side door and pulled me into a stairwell before I could scream. It was Laura Bennett, one of the building technicians. I knew her from the break room, always the one who remembered how everyone took their coffee. Tonight her face had none of that softness left in it. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low and fast. "Colonel Grant has men in this building. He does not want this alliance to happen. If the Queen marries a human, Earth gets full access to Vextari technology, and Grant wants that technology locked behind military control, not shared with the world. You are the one thing standing between him and that plan." I told her that made no sense, that I was a janitor, not a threat to anyone. "You are the reason a treaty exists," she said. "That makes you the biggest threat in this building tonight." Somewhere above us, boots hit the stairs in a rhythm that was not friendly. Laura shoved a badge into my hand, one that opened maintenance doors, the kind of pass I had carried for 2 years without ever once feeling grateful for it. "You know this building better than anyone with a gun does," she said. "Use that." She was right. I had mopped every inch of that convention center, cleaned out its vents, fixed its stuck doors, memorized its bones the way only someone invisible to everyone else gets the chance to. I turned away from the stairwell and pulled open a service hatch instead, dropping into a narrow crawl space that ran behind the east wing walls. The dark swallowed me whole. Pipes hissed somewhere close, warm and steady, and I moved through that tight metal throat, guided by nothing but memory, and my own heartbeat slamming in my ears. Voices echoed above me through the vents. I heard Grant himself, calm in a way that made my skin crawl, telling his men that the human candidate needed to disappear quietly before the Queen finished her security sweep of the building. Quietly, like I was a stain he wanted mopped off the record. I kept moving. The crawl space forked, and I took the left path, the one that led toward the loading dock, because loading docks have exits, and exits meant a chance. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely keep them steady on the rungs of the ladder that dropped me down into a lower service corridor. I was not alone down there. A shape unfolded itself from the shadows near a row of generators, tall and covered in pale gray scales, with eyes like drops of oil catching the light. My whole body went cold, certain this was one of Grant's men wearing something worse than a uniform. Then it spoke, and the small translator clipped to its collar turned the sound into English a half-second later. "I am Kesh," it said. "I guard the Queen." I felt her fear spike through our bond the moment the power failed. "She sent me to find you before her enemies did." I asked what enemies, because apparently I had a whole list now, and nobody had thought to give me a copy. "There is a prince named Threll," Kesh said. "He wanted to be chosen tonight. Vextari law says a rejected suitor cannot challenge the Queen directly, but nothing stops him from removing the one she picked instead. He arrived on Earth hours before the ceremony. I believe he has already made contact with your Colonel Grant. 2 enemies with one goal make dangerous friends." That explained the boots on the stairs and the voice that did not sound remotely alien, giving orders that clearly benefited someone who was. Kesh led me forward through the corridor, moving fast and low, checking every corner before I could even register there was a corner to check. We reached a junction where 3 hallways met, and that was where the first real trouble found us. 2 men in dark tactical gear stepped out from the left hallway, weapons raised, faces blank with the kind of training that leaves no room for hesitation. Kesh moved before I could blink, knocking the nearest one off balance with a strike that looked almost gentle and was clearly not, sending the man crashing into a stack of folded chairs. The second one fired, and the shot went wide over my shoulder, close enough that I felt the heat of it pass my ear. I did not think. I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall bracket and swung it into his ribs, and he folded over with a sound that told me he would live, but would not be chasing anyone for a while. Kesh pulled me down the right hallway before I even processed what my own hands had just done. "We are close to the Queen's chamber," Kesh said. "If we reach her, Grant loses his advantage. His men will not fire near her without risking a war neither side wants." That should have been comforting. It was not, because right as we turned the next corner, Threll was standing in the middle of the hallway waiting for us. He looked nothing like Kesh. Taller, with dark red scales and a presence that made the air feel thinner, like the room itself was holding its breath around him. He studied me, the way you study something you plan to throw away. "The human," he said, his voice sliding through the translator with a coldness that needed no help from technology. "She chose a servant over a prince. This insult ends tonight, one way or another." Kesh stepped between us, but Threll only smiled and raised one hand, and a group of his own guards emerged from a side passage behind him, cutting off our retreat. We were trapped between an alien prince who wanted me gone, and a human colonel who wanted the same thing for entirely different reasons, and for one terrible second, I understood that both of them agreed on exactly one point, and that point was me. Kesh whispered something urgent, a plan with no time to explain it fully. He said the environmental control room was 2 doors behind us, and that the Queen's private frequency ran through it, and if I could reach it and open a direct channel, she would come, and her presence alone would end this standoff before it turned into a battle nobody could take back. 2 doors. It might as well have been 2 miles with Threll's guards closing in from both directions. I did the only thing my instincts, sharpened by 2 years of navigating this building blind, could offer. I ducked through a maintenance panel low on the wall, one I had replaced myself only a month earlier, and dropped into another crawl space that ran directly beneath the corridor floor. Shouts erupted above me almost immediately, boots pounding the tiles, Threll's voice snapping orders in a language the translator did not bother to catch. The crawl space was barely wide enough for my shoulders. I crawled forward with my heart hammering so hard I thought it might give away my position on its own, past pipes that burned my forearms and wires that snagged my sleeve, until I found the access ladder Kesh had described, right where the environmental room's floor grate should be. I pushed it open and pulled myself up into a small, dim room full of humming machines and blinking lights, and there, exactly as promised, was a control panel with a single unmarked frequency switch glowing faint blue. The door behind me burst open before I could reach it. It was not Threll, it was Colonel Grant, standing calm and composed with a weapon held loosely at his side, like a man who had never once needed to rush toward anything in his entire life. "You caused quite a lot of trouble for a janitor," he said. "All you had to do was disappear quietly. Instead, you cost me 2 men, and a very useful alliance with a prince who happens to want exactly what I want." I told him the switch was right behind me, and that the second I flipped it, every soldier and guard on either side of this war would know exactly where he was standing. He smiled like that thought did not scare him at all. "By the time she gets here," he said, "this will already be over." He was wrong, though he did not know it yet, because Kesh came through the door behind him at exactly that moment, faster than I had seen anything move all night, and the two of them collided in a struggle that sent equipment crashing off the walls. I did not wait to see who won it. I threw myself at the panel and slammed the switch, and the room filled with a low tone that meant the channel was open and listening. I said her name into it, just her name, because I had no idea what the proper words were for calling for help from an empress. The response was immediate, not words, but presence, a sound like the sea rushing into a room that had no business hearing the sea at all, and every light in the building seemed to bend toward that sound for one impossible second. Grant shoved Kesh off him and turned the weapon on me, and I remember thinking, with strange calm, that a janitor from a small town in Ohio was about to become a footnote in a treaty he never asked to be part of. The wall exploded inward instead. She came through it like she had come through every closed door since the moment I first saw her, and Grant's weapon was gone from his hand before he even registered she had moved. She did not touch him with violence. She simply placed herself between us with a stillness that carried more weight than any threat could, and Grant, for the first time all night, looked like a man who understood he had already lost. Security forces poured in behind her within seconds, both human and Vextari, moving together instead of against each other, for the first time since the alarms had gone off. Threll was already in restraints in the hallway outside, his own guards having quietly decided that loyalty to a losing cause was not worth the trouble. Grant did not fight. He simply looked at me, and at her, and said this was not over, that people would ask questions about how a queen's chosen mate ended up hunted through his own building on the very night of the ceremony. She answered before I could. "People will indeed ask questions," she said, her voice steady and clear, even through the translator's slight delay, "and they will learn that a colonel tried to murder an unarmed man to protect a monopoly on power. That story will travel further than yours ever could." Grant had nothing left to say after that. They led him away, and the building slowly settled back into something like quiet, the kind that feels strange after so much noise, like your ears keep expecting danger out of habit. She turned to me then, and for the first time that night, her expression softened into something almost human, something worried in a way that had nothing to do with politics or empires. "You are hurt," she said, and I realized I was. My arms scraped raw from the crawl space, a bruise blooming along my ribs from somewhere in the chaos I had not even noticed happening. I told her I would live, that it took more than a colonel and a prince to take down a man who had survived worse Monday mornings. She did not understand the joke, but she understood the tone, and something in her shoulders relaxed the way they do when a person finally allows themselves to stop bracing for the worst. "I did not choose you for your title," she said. "I chose you because you noticed things no one else bothered to see. Tonight you proved that same instinct could save a life instead of simply improving a floor. I am sorry it had to be your own life you saved." I looked around at the wrecked control room, at Kesh checking his own injuries with the same calm he had shown facing down armed men twice his size, at the hallway outside slowly filling with people who an hour ago had been strangers and were now, somehow, allies bound by the same terrible night. I told her I did not regret any of it, even the part where I lost my shoes somewhere on the second floor. She laughed, that same strange cello sound from the ceremony, and this time I understood exactly what it meant. Word of what happened spread fast, faster than any official statement could keep up with. By morning the story was not about an alien queen choosing a lowly janitor. It was about a man who had run through fire, literal and political, to protect a treaty that would change both our worlds, and who had done it not with weapons, but with the same quiet attention to detail that had once kept a convention center's floors clean. Grant's plan collapsed entirely once the recordings from the environmental room reached the right people. Threll was returned to his homeworld in disgrace, stripped of any claim to challenge again. The alliance that almost died in a service corridor beneath a convention hall instead grew stronger, built on the kind of trust that only survives because it was tested and did not break. As for me, I never did find those shoes. I did, however, find something I never expected walking into work, that ordinary morning with a mop over my shoulder. I found a queen who saw exactly who I was, before the world nearly took that from her, and a reason strong enough to keep fighting for a future neither of us had planned, but both of us, somehow, were not willing to let go.